If you've ever felt like manifesting your desires was harder than it should be, like no matter how hard you tried to visualize or set intentions, something kept you stuck, this might be the most important idea you encounter. There is a reason your efforts often feel like they're working against you. It's not because you lack discipline or clarity. It's because most of what you've been taught about creating change relies on force. Forcing your mind to think positively, forcing your body to stay motivated, forcing reality to bend to your timeline. But in the realm of quantum physics and consciousness, force is rarely the catalyst for transformation. Instead, there is a phenomenon that explains why so many people get exhausted chasing results that never seem to materialize. It's called frequency interference. When your internal state is filled with effort, tension, and the anxiety of wanting something to happen, you introduce noise into your signal. From the perspective of the quantum field, your energy becomes inconsistent. One part of you is broadcasting desire, but another part is broadcasting fear that it won't arrive. And the field responds to the totality of that signal, not just your stated intention. In this video, you're going to learn about what I call the quantum frequency shift, a state change so fundamental it reorganizes your entire relationship with reality. It's not about thinking harder, working more, or performing elaborate rituals. It's about creating a coherent frequency inside your own field that resonates with what you're choosing to experience. And the paradox is this: the moment you stop forcing reality to comply with your will, the energy you've been scattering in frustration consolidates. Your nervous system calms, your awareness expands. You move from a contracted signal to a harmonious one. And in that state, the field begins to reflect your intention more clearly. If this sounds abstract, consider the science behind it. Every thought you have produces an electromagnetic signature. Every emotional state generates measurable patterns in your heart and brain. When you're stressed, your heart rhythm becomes erratic, your breath constricts, and your brain waves fragment into disordered frequencies. This is called incoherence, and it creates what researchers describe as biological noise. You can think of it like trying to tune an old radio to a clear station while static is blaring in the background. No matter how beautiful the music is, you can't hear it because the signal isn't clean. This is why many people spend years repeating affirmations or visualization techniques without experiencing meaningful change. They are layering positive thoughts over a body that remains in survival mode. They are projecting desire while embodying resistance. And so, no matter how many times they say, "I am abundant," the field receives the underlying vibration of lack. The quantum frequency shift isn't a method you do. It's a shift you allow by creating conditions for coherence to arise naturally. In other words, it's about aligning your physiology and awareness in a way that your energy stabilizes into a singular, powerful signal. Today, you'll learn how to create this shift and why it doesn't require you to be perfect or constantly monitor every thought. You'll see that your nervous system is capable of reorganizing itself when you simply provide it with the right inputs: slower breathing, an intention rooted in curiosity rather than desperation, and a willingness to let go of urgency. Before we explore the science and the technique, I want you to consider something. Every outcome in your life has been shaped by the frequency you consistently broadcast. Not the one you occasionally visit when you feel inspired, but the one you return to when no one is watching. That frequency isn't a moral judgment of your worth. It's simply the composite of your thoughts, emotions, and biological state. When you understand this, it becomes clear why no amount of forcing or striving can override a chronically incoherent signal. But the moment you experience coherence, when your breath, heart, and mind synchronize, something shifts. You feel it in your body, a softening, an openness, a quiet sense that you don't need to prove or chase anything. And ironically, it's often in this state of non-attachment that reality begins to respond in ways you once thought required effort. In the next part of this experience, we're going to look at the scientific foundation for this shift. You'll discover how researchers measure coherence, why it's so essential to transforming your energy, and how this process aligns perfectly with what ancient traditions have always taught about surrender, presence, and trust. Stay with me, because once you understand this, you'll realize that the life you've been trying to force into existence is already available. waiting for you to tune to its frequency. If you've ever wondered whether this idea of a frequency shift is just spiritual metaphor or something that science can actually measure, you're not alone. It's natural to want evidence before you trust something that sounds intangible. But what's extraordinary about the intersection of quantum physics, neuroscience, and ancient spiritual traditions is that they all point to the same principle. Your internal state isn't just a feeling, it's a signal. And that signal is shaping how reality unfolds around you, moment by moment. Let's begin with the science. In the field of neurocardiology, researchers have discovered that your heart produces the most powerful electromagnetic field in your body, many times stronger than the field generated by your brain. This field extends several feet beyond your skin, and it's measurable with modern instruments like magnetocardiograms. When you feel frustration, anxiety, or any form of survival stress, your heart rhythm becomes jagged and erratic. This is called incoherence. Incoherence is not a moral failing. It's simply the signature of a nervous system in defense mode. But here's the problem. When your heart rhythm is disordered, your brain waves become chaotic as well. Your breath shortens, your immune system goes on high alert, and your perception narrows to scan for threats. This is an ancient survival mechanism that once helped us avoid danger. But in modern life, it often becomes a chronic baseline, one that broadcasts a signal of stress into the quantum field, whether you realize it or not. Now contrast this with the state of coherence. When you intentionally slow your breathing and focus your awareness on feelings of appreciation or calm, your heart rhythm becomes smooth and sine wave-like. Scientists call this a state of heart-brain coherence, and it has measurable effects. Stress hormones like cortisol decrease, regenerative hormones like DHEA increase. Your brain waves synchronize with your heart rhythm. Your immune system strengthens. Your perception expands beyond fear-driven thinking. This is not theory, it's data. And from a quantum perspective, coherence creates a stable, powerful frequency, one that interacts with the field in ways incoherence cannot. Imagine it like tuning forks. When one tuning fork vibrates at a certain frequency, a nearby fork begins to resonate with that same frequency through a phenomenon called entrainment. Your coherent field works similarly. When you maintain this state, you entrain your environment and the probabilities within the field to match your signal. This is why, in elevated states, synchronicities appear more often. Solutions arrive seemingly out of nowhere, and life begins to feel like it's flowing rather than resisting you. Ancient traditions described this state long before modern science. Yogic texts spoke of samadhi, a state of deep presence and unity. Mystics called it surrender, the art of releasing control and allowing a higher intelligence to organize reality. In Taoist philosophy, it's known as Wu Wei, or effortless action. While the language varies, the essence is the same. When you release resistance and align your inner state, reality reorganizes itself in response. But let's be clear, coherence doesn't mean you never feel fear or doubt. It means you don't live there. You learn to witness those fluctuations without collapsing your entire energy field into them. You return to the baseline of calm more easily because your nervous system has been trained to recognize it as home. This is why the quantum frequency shift isn't about forcing yourself to feel good all the time. It's about cultivating the conditions: slower breath, relaxed awareness, authentic intention that allow coherence to arise naturally. Once you experience this, you realize something profound. Effort is often a symptom of misalignment. The harder you push, the more you signal to the field that you are separate from what you want. The more you release and attune, the more naturally life begins to reflect your inner state. This is why so many people feel exhausted on the path of personal development. They're trying to solve internal incoherence with more information, more techniques, more performance. But the quantum field doesn't respond to volume, it responds to clarity. So how do you create clarity? You learn to notice when you're in incoherence and gently return to coherence, over and over. You let go of urgency. You remember that the field is participatory. It mirrors back the frequency you emit. And you realize that the shift you've been waiting for doesn't require external proof before you trust it. In the next part of this experience, I'm going to guide you step by step through the quantum frequency shift technique. You'll see that it's deceptively simple, a combination of breath, focus, and a single question that dissolves resistance. If you practice it with sincerity, you'll begin to feel the unmistakable difference in your own energy, sometimes within minutes. Stay present, because this is where theory becomes embodiment, and where you stop forcing reality and start tuning to it. Now that you understand the science and philosophy behind coherence, you're ready to experience the quantum frequency shift for yourself. This practice isn't complicated, but it requires something most people find surprisingly difficult: the willingness to stop striving. Because the moment you stop trying to force reality, you create the conditions for your field to reorganize itself. Before we walk through the steps, I want you to know this is not about achieving perfection. You don't have to be free from all doubt or negative emotion. You don't have to maintain a constant state of bliss. All that's required is your willingness to approach the practice with curiosity instead of expectation. When you bring that quality of openness, the technique becomes a doorway, one you can return to as often as you like. Here is how you do it. First, find a place where you can sit comfortably without interruption for a few minutes. You don't need a special environment or ritual, though if you enjoy lighting a candle or playing soft ambient music, feel free to do so. What matters most is that you feel safe to let your attention turn inward. Begin by closing your eyes. Take a slow, deliberate inhale through your nose. Let your belly expand as if you are gently filling a vessel. Exhale softly through your mouth, allowing your shoulders to drop. Repeat this 3 or 4 times until you feel your breath naturally slowing down. This first step is called physiological priming. When you slow your breath, you signal to your nervous system that you are safe. This single act begins to shift your heart rhythm toward coherence. If you could see your electromagnetic field, you would notice the jagged, stressed waveforms softening into smoother patterns. Next, bring your attention to your heart center. You can place a hand lightly over your chest if it helps you focus. Imagine that each inhale is drawing a subtle, luminous energy into your heart. Each exhale spreads this energy throughout your body, creating a calm, radiant field around you. Now, here is where the shift happens. Gently introduce the feeling of appreciation. This doesn't have to be a huge, dramatic wave of emotion. It can be as simple as gratitude for the breath you're taking, or the quiet space you've created. The key is authenticity. Even a small, genuine feeling has a powerful impact on your frequency. Hold this focus for a minute or two, allowing the feeling to build without forcing it. If your mind wanders, notice it with kindness, and return to your breath and the sensation in your heart. You may start to feel subtle changes, a warmth, a sense of expansion, or simply a quiet stillness. This is the beginning of coherence. Once you feel stable, you can introduce a question, one that dissolves resistance and helps your field align with possibility. What would it feel like if this was already resolved? Don't look for an intellectual answer. Instead, let your body respond. You might notice a softening in your chest, a gentle release in your jaw, or a sense of openness in your awareness. This embodied response is evidence that your nervous system is exiting the stress loop. Here's why this step is so important. When you ask, what would it feel like, you bypass the logical mind that wants to plan, control, and predict. You move into the domain of frequency, into the language the quantum field actually understands. Because the field doesn't respond to your plans. It responds to the vibration you hold. I want you to think of this as tuning an instrument. You are not forcing the strings into harmony. You are gently adjusting tension until resonance occurs. Sometimes that resonance arrives quickly. Other times it builds gradually. Either way, your only task is to stay curious and allow the process. You can practice this technique anytime. Before starting your day, to set your baseline frequency. When you notice yourself slipping into stress or urgency. Before making a decision, so your action arises from alignment, not fear. Many people expect dramatic shifts the first time they try this. Occasionally that happens, a sudden surge of insight, or a powerful emotional release. But more often the change is subtle. You simply feel less contracted, more receptive, and strangely at peace, even if nothing in your external circumstances has changed. This is what coherence feels like. And from this place you become far more effective, not because you're working harder, but because your energy is no longer divided. Your intention is clear, your nervous system is calm, your field is stable. I want to share a brief example to illustrate how this can look in practice. A client of mine, a creative professional, had spent months trying to secure a new opportunity. She was making plans, sending proposals, visualizing success. But beneath all her effort was a current of fear. What if it doesn't happen? What does it mean about me? She was broadcasting two frequencies simultaneously, desire and doubt, and the result was stagnation. When she began practicing the quantum frequency shift, something changed. She stopped rehearsing outcomes and started embodying the feeling of trust. Within days, opportunities began to flow again. Introductions, unexpected collaborations, a project she'd almost given up on reappeared. The point isn't that the practice magically delivered what she wanted. It's that her coherent signal made her more perceptive, more relaxed, more able to recognize the doors that were already open. This is what you're capable of too. You don't have to force your reality into compliance. You can learn to attune to the frequency that naturally attracts what resonates. In the next part of this experience, we'll explore what happens when you begin to live this way consistently, how your external life starts to reorganize itself around your new coherence, and the subtle signs that your frequency is stabilizing. Stay with me. You're closer to this shift than you might think. When you begin practicing the quantum frequency shift consistently, you'll likely notice something unexpected. Life doesn't necessarily become easier in the sense that every challenge vanishes overnight. But the way you experience life changes so fundamentally that even the same circumstances feel lighter, clearer, and more workable. This is one of the first signs that your frequency is stabilizing. You realize that your sense of peace and possibility is no longer dependent on external validation or proof. Instead of waiting for reality to confirm that you're on the right path, you start to feel a deep internal certainty that your alignment is the proof itself. One of the most powerful shifts you'll notice is that urgency dissolves. The constant background noise of, "I have to figure this out right now," starts to quiet. You find yourself responding to situations rather than reacting. Decisions arise from clarity rather than anxiety. Even if your mind occasionally slips into old patterns, you return to your baseline of coherence more quickly. This doesn't mean you stop caring about outcomes. It means you stop believing that you need to control everything to be okay. And paradoxically, as you let go of the compulsion to force, you often see more movement in your external life. The projects that felt stuck begin to open. The conversations you were dreading resolve themselves more smoothly. Resources and connections start to show up with less friction. This is not magic. It's resonance. The clearer your signal, the easier it becomes for reality to organize itself around your frequency. In quantum terms, your field collapses probabilities into form, but the quality of what emerges is shaped by the coherence and consistency of your vibration. Let's look at a few examples of how this often shows up. 1. Synchronicity increases. You might think of someone you haven't spoken to in months and they call you that day. You feel an inexplicable nudge to visit a place or explore a topic, only to discover that it holds exactly the next step you needed. These experiences are not coincidences. They are evidence that your field is interacting more fluidly with the larger web of possibility. 2. Relationships recalibrate. People who resonate with your old patterns may naturally drift away. New connections enter your life, often carrying a sense of familiarity or ease. You may feel drawn to collaborations that previously felt out of reach, not because you worked harder, but because your frequency now matches those opportunities. 3. Your body feels different. Many people report subtle but profound physiological changes: improved sleep, steadier energy, a softer baseline in the nervous system. You might notice that you breathe more deeply without trying, or that your body releases tension spontaneously. 4. You feel less reactive. Challenges still arise, but they don't feel like personal threats. You find yourself observing instead of immediately contracting. This is one of the clearest signs your coherence is becoming stable. You maintain perspective, even when circumstances fluctuate. 5. A quiet sense of trust emerges. Perhaps the most life-changing effect is a feeling that you don't have to prove yourself to anyone, not even to yourself. You know in an embodied way that your worth doesn't hinge on achievements or outcomes. This trust is magnetic. It allows you to act with purpose without the weight of desperation. When these shifts begin to surface, many people wonder, how do I know this is real? The answer is simple. When your perception, physiology, and responses change in ways you couldn't force before, you're not imagining progress, you're experiencing it. This is why the quantum frequency shift isn't a quick fix or a technique you use once and forget. It's a practice, a way of relating to yourself and the field that grows stronger every time you return to it. The more consistently you cultivate coherence, the more naturally you stabilize in a frequency that attracts experiences aligned with who you're becoming. And here's something to remember. It's normal to oscillate. You'll have days when old patterns resurface. You'll catch yourself reacting or doubting. This is part of integration. Every time you notice and choose to return to coherence, you reinforce your new baseline. Think of it like strengthening a muscle. Each repetition builds capacity. So before we move into the next part of this experience, I'd love to invite you to acknowledge this process in yourself. Because the act of naming your shift, of claiming it consciously, amplifies the signal you're broadcasting. If you're feeling even a subtle resonance right now, a sense that something in you is reorganizing, take a moment to anchor it. In the comments, simply write, I am shifting. These 3 words are more than a phrase. They are a declaration to your nervous system, to your subconscious mind, and to the quantum field that you are choosing a new way of being. Stay with me, because in the next part, we're going to explore the most common mistakes people make when practicing this shift, and how to avoid falling back into the cycle of force and frustration. You'll see that sustaining coherence doesn't require perfection. It only requires your willingness to keep returning to presence over and over until it becomes your natural state. You're already closer to this transformation than you realize. If you've been practicing the quantum frequency shift or any form of vibrational alignment, you've probably noticed how quickly the mind wants to turn it into another performance. Another way to measure, judge, and prove your worth. It's almost inevitable in the beginning, because we've all been conditioned to believe that results only come through effort and control. But this is one of the greatest paradoxes you'll encounter on this path. The more you chase a certain state, the more you reinforce the feeling that you don't have it. The more you try to force coherence, the more you signal to the field that you're still operating from separation. This is why so many people get stuck in cycles of frustration. They start the practice with sincere intention. They feel a moment of real peace, and then almost immediately their mind begins to ask, is this working? Why don't I feel it more strongly? Why hasn't everything changed yet? These questions are understandable. They come from the part of you that's been taught to measure progress by external markers and instant gratification. But in the quantum realm, the field doesn't respond to impatience or self-criticism. It responds to clarity and consistency. So let's look at the most common pitfalls that can pull you back into incoherence and how to navigate them with awareness. 1. Trying to force an emotion you don't genuinely feel. Many people believe they must manufacture bliss, love, or euphoria in order to elevate their frequency. But forced emotion creates inner conflict. If you're feeling doubt or sadness, pretending to feel grateful only adds another layer of resistance. Instead, start with something real, even if it feels small. The relief of taking a deeper breath, the simple appreciation that you have a moment to pause. Authenticity carries far more energetic coherence than any performance. 2. Using the practice as a strategy to manipulate outcomes. It's natural to hope that your life will improve when you align your energy, and over time, it will. But if your primary motive is to get something from the field, to manifest a specific result quickly, you slip back into force. The quantum frequency shift works best when you see coherence as an end in itself. The calm, the clarity, the sense of connection, these are the real gifts. From there, outcomes emerge organically, often in ways you couldn't have scripted. 3. Becoming hyper-vigilant about every thought. Once you realize your energy shapes reality, it's tempting to monitor your mind obsessively. You catch a negative thought and immediately panic, fearing you've messed up your vibration. But this hyper-control creates more incoherence. Thoughts will arise, doubts will surface. None of this has to be a problem if you witness them without identifying. The field doesn't require perfection. It responds to your dominant, consistent frequency over time. 4. Expecting immediate, dramatic change. Some shifts can feel instant. You may have moments of sudden clarity or relief, but more often transformation is incremental, a gradual reorganization of perception and physiology. If you keep measuring your progress by how fast reality rearranges itself, you'll miss the subtle indicators that your frequency is already rising. Deeper sleep, more spontaneous calm, less reactivity. These changes are the foundation of bigger shifts to come. 5. Abandoning the practice when life becomes challenging. Ironically, the moments you feel most contracted are the times coherence can serve you most powerfully. But many people assume that if they can't feel calm naturally, the practice isn't working, so they stop. This is when it's most important to return to the basics, slowing your breath, softening your awareness, and remembering that your worth doesn't depend on feeling perfect. Over time, you build the capacity to stay coherent, even in turbulence. When you understand these patterns, you stop seeing them as failures. You recognize them as part of the learning curve, opportunities to strengthen your ability to return to presence. This is what mastery looks like. Not an unbroken state of bliss, but a willingness to keep choosing alignment each time you drift away. One way to make this process easier is to shift your definition of success. Instead of asking, "Did I manifest what I wanted today?" Try asking, "Did I return to coherence more often? Did I notice when I slipped into force? Did I soften my grip, even for a moment?" These questions measure the only thing you can truly control, your internal state. And when you make coherence the priority, external shifts become inevitable, not because you force them, but because you finally stop scattering your signal. In the next part of this experience, we're going to bring everything together. I'll guide you through a short exercise you can practice right now to feel your frequency stabilizing in real time. You'll also hear an invitation to join a community of people committed to living from this state of coherence, not as a fleeting experience, but as a new way of being. Stay present, because integration is where transformation becomes lasting, and where you discover that the field has always been listening. Now that you've learned the principles behind the quantum frequency shift and explored how to recognize and avoid the most common traps, it's time to experience this shift for yourself, because no amount of theory can replace the felt sense of coherence in your own body. This practice will only take a few minutes, but it can serve as a powerful reset whenever you feel yourself slipping back into effort and urgency. You can return to it anytime you need to remember how simple it can be to align with a more stable frequency. Find a quiet place where you can sit comfortably without distractions. You don't need to be in a perfect state of mind. You don't have to clear all your thoughts. Just bring your willingness to be here exactly as you are. Gently close your eyes or soften your gaze. Let your hands rest on your lap or over your heart, whichever feels more natural. Take a slow, steady inhale through your nose. Feel your belly expand. Hold the breath for a moment, then release it softly through your mouth. Do this 2 more times, each time letting the exhale become longer than the inhale. With your next breath, bring your attention to the space in the center of your chest. Imagine this space as a soft, luminous field, a quiet presence that has always been here beneath the noise of your thoughts. As you continue to breathe, invite a feeling of appreciation into your awareness. It doesn't have to be overwhelming or perfect. Just find something simple you can be grateful for. The breath in your lungs, the steadiness of the chair supporting you, the fact that you've chosen to spend this moment with yourself. Let this feeling expand gently. You don't need to force it. You don't need to analyze it. Simply notice how your body responds as you hold appreciation in your awareness. Maybe your shoulders drop. Maybe your jaw softens. Maybe you feel a subtle warmth in your chest. Stay here for a few breaths, allowing this sense of coherence to grow naturally. Now, introduce a single question into the space of your heart. What would it feel like if I stopped forcing? Don't look for an answer in words. Let your body respond. Perhaps there's a small sense of relief, a soft exhale, a quiet spaciousness. This is coherence. This is the frequency beneath all striving. If you feel your mind drifting, just notice it and return to your breath and the feeling in your heart. You're not trying to create anything. You're simply remembering what it feels like to be in resonance. Stay here as long as you like. When you're ready, take one more slow inhale, feeling the stability of this state. And as you exhale, open your eyes gently, bringing this sense of coherence with you. If you felt something shift, even subtly, I want you to know this is where real transformation begins. Not in grand gestures or dramatic breakthroughs, but in moments when you choose to return to alignment without demanding instant proof. This is a practice you can carry into every part of your life. Before a conversation, before you start your day, whenever you feel the urge to control or to question your progress, you can pause, breathe, and remember. Coherence is always available to you. And if you found value here, if something in you feels a little clearer, a little calmer, a little more willing to trust, I'd love to invite you to stay connected. Subscribing to this channel isn't about collecting more techniques or chasing the next idea. It's about joining a community of people who are ready to live from this place of coherence together, a space where science and spirituality meet, where we can explore these principles with curiosity and depth, and where your evolution is supported, one breath at a time. If this resonates, you can subscribe now, and know that every time you return here, whether to learn something new or simply to remind yourself of what you already know, you are strengthening this frequency within yourself. Thank you for being here. For the quiet courage it takes to let go of force and trust the intelligence of your own field. Stay in coherence. Keep observing with compassion. And always remember, the field responds to who you are, not what you try to prove.